everybody. I'm back again for another video. Well, I'm not real sure what this channel is going to be. I've wanted to make a couple of these videos for a while. The last one, thanks everybody that watched it. Thanks everybody that commented. Of course, some people that watched my last video ended up commenting, and I appreciate that. Some folks had what I would consider a negative opinion, and some folks had a positive opinion. And I'm glad that we live in a country where we can disagree. That's part of what makes us free. I'll say though, to be honest, some of the comments made me pause. If deep in your heart you believe that someone deserves to die, what does that say about you as a person? If you think that because someone says something that hurts your feelings or that you consider bigotry or racism, if you think because they say things and they deserve to die, what does that make you? How do you know what someone deserves? What are you basing that on? Like, we live in a land where we have lawyers and judges and juries, and even they can be flawed or corrupted. But that's why you don't just have one, right? That's why you have many. And yes, some people think they know better than the system that we have in place. They think they know better than the folks that have experience in these areas. They think they know better, and they think the answer is violence. As we've seen once again today, someone decided to take matters into their own hands and decided to go into a Mormon church and execute, I guess, some sort of vengeance upon the members of that church. And it's very unfortunate. People died again. I mean, what in the world is going on? Another person that thinks that they know better. But anyway, I kind of want to go back to talking about Charlie Kirk. That's what I was originally thinking about for this video, before I even heard about this other thing that happened. Let's take a second. I think a good idea would be to define racism and bigotry, what that really is. Because someone in the comments last time, and again, thank you for commenting. Thank you for having an opinion and being free to be able to share what you think in the comments, even though I personally disagree with what that person said about Charlie Kirk. I've done research in the past and studied a little bit about what the world says racism is and what the world says bigotry is. Bigot is someone who is intolerant of people who are different than themselves or who hold different beliefs. And intolerant doesn't just mean that you disagree and say things that may sound hurtful, that may sound like malintent. Bigotry has nothing to do with the other person feeling like someone is a bigot. Bigotry literally has to do with somebody that does not tolerate people that are different from them. Doesn't tolerate them, right? So that would imply that Charlie Kirk didn't tolerate black people, or Charlie Kirk didn't tolerate gay people, or Charlie Kirk didn't tolerate people that weren't his demographic. And that is absolute nonsense. You can look at multiple videos where he had conversations with those folks and tried to get them to understand whether it be politics or religion, where he was coming from, right? And when people don't like that, when they don't feel that they are articulate enough to be able to contend with the things that he's saying, they call him a bigot, right? I think that's a sleazy way out, personally. But a bigot is someone who refuses to listen to opposing viewpoints. If I remember correctly, Charlie Kirk gave folks a forum to be able to convey their viewpoints. And then he would counter their viewpoints with information. To me, that doesn't sound like a bigot. To me, the people that would shut Charlie Kirk down, that's bigotry. That's actually the bigot. See, the Bible even talks about thou that points out one thing and doest the same, being a hypocrite, right? So a bigot is someone that harbors hatred or contempt toward individuals simply because of their identity or beliefs. Now, harboring hatred is not the same thing as pointing out biological differences between genders, or how the perception of what we would call gender ideology is based on what humans may or may think about themselves as far as their personal identity, and it may not be what I detect on the outside when I make a physical observation of somebody. See, the Bible says, male and female created he them. It says that. And I'm a Bible believer. Not everyone is, and I know that. But there's a lot less confusion when you look at the truth than when you look at what we try to do when we try to make everyone happy. And what do I mean by that? Well, just because someone feels something doesn't make it true. If things are based on feelings, if facts are based on feelings, then the foundation, as I said in my last video, is shifty. Because I might feel one way on Tuesday and another way on Thursday. You can't base existence on just feelings. Now, a bigot, like I said, harboring hatred or contempt toward individuals simply because of their identity or beliefs. I don't think Charlie Kirk harbored hatred. I know that I don't necessarily harbor hatred, frustration at times, annoyance even, but not hatred. Those are not the same thing. A bigot will act with prejudice, letting their biases influence their actions or decisions. So when you act with prejudice, that's day to day. That's not just a conversation where two people disagree. That's every moment of every day. Saying, hey, I don't agree with you as a person. So I don't want you anywhere near me or anywhere near my family. I don't want you to be in this country. I don't want you to be free. You can't take part in the American dream because I don't like who you are. And that is not what was conveyed by Charlie Kirk. It wasn't. But I'll tell you, a lot of folks that disagree with Charlie Kirk will say that. People that disagree with Charlie Kirk are the same people right now that are shooting up churches. They are shooting little kids in the back, is what I heard today. I don't even know if YouTube will let me say that. What in the world is this country coming to? So a bigot, to sum it up, isn't Charlie Kirk. It's not. Now a racist, someone, this racism is a little different, right? Very hot topic in 2025. Everybody thinks they can just throw the word racism around, and that it will cut to the heart. Like, you're racist because you said this and you disagree with that. I dealt with instances of folks that claim to have experienced racism, and I sat both parties down because I was the mediator in that event, and I helped them to see how what happened wasn't racism. And they were both people of color pointing the finger saying that one another was racist, right? And I think that's a term that gets thrown around a lot. The first use of the term, I think, was the early 1900s. And, when you look up racism as a whole, like, what is that? I think people don't really even know what it is anymore, right? So a racist basically is someone who believes that one race is inherently superior or inferior to another. Do I believe that there are people in the country that think race A is superior or inferior to race B? Absolutely. I've seen it. I've experienced it. Who hasn't? I'll be honest. The world will try to convince you that a Caucasian person, male, female, whatever, cannot experience racism. That is absolutely not true. Not true. Right? Well, how do you know that? How can you back that up? Because I've seen it. I've seen it. So racists, they discriminate against others based on race or ethnicity. So pointing out how one demographic has advantage over another due to programs that the government has put in place, that's not racism. I will tell you, I think it's more racist for someone to say, hey, James, you're a black man, which means you're probably not going to amount to anything, which means the government needs to help you succeed because the world is stacked against you and you're not going to be able to make it. That's pretty racist. I think it's racist for someone to tell me, "Oh, James, I know you want to vote. I know you want to be able to vote, but you shouldn't have to worry about getting an ID because I know it's hard for black people to get IDs." To me, that's racist. Like, what in the world? Like, what makes you think I'm not smart enough to get an ID? Or, hey, James, I know you want to go to this college, but you're probably not going to get as good as a shot as this other guy. So we're going to boost you up a little bit to help you get in. That's racist. They looked at my race and made a judgment based on my race. All right, that's more racist than someone saying, hey, it is not fair for people who are qualified to get passed over because they don't meet the requirements of certain demographics, whether it's male, female, whether that's black, white, or whatever race, what have you. So, racists, they promote stereotypes, whether subtle or blatant, and they justify unfair treatment or violence using race as the reason. So is it racism for Charlie Kirk to say that person A, B, or C benefits from a DEI program, which is unfair to the folks that don't qualify for the DEI program? Is that racist? It is not. By the definition, it is not. Unfortunately, we have this common belief in our society that people of color cannot be racist. That is absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. And I think that, so many times, so many people in our society do not know how to be happy and to love themselves for who they are. They don't. They absolutely do not. So when I was a kid, I'd say take Superman. I used to want to dress up like Superman, and there are people that say you can't be Superman because you're black. You can't. And that hurt my feelings a little bit. I was like, who am I supposed to be? Meteor Man? If you ever watched Meteor Man, he wasn't, some folks will call that a classic, right? I wasn't a big fan of Meteor Man. Sorry. I'm still not a big fan of Meteor Man. I don't think I would ever dress up as Meteor Man. Not putting down the actor, not putting down the film, just not my cup of tea, right? I don't think that Meteor Man holds a candle to Superman. He just does not, right? Now, some folks will say, well, that's racism, and that's why Meteor Man wasn't great. No, it just wasn't a great film for me. Not my cup of tea, like I said. So, take that for what it is, right? I don't want to spend too much time talking or thinking about that. But, I bring that up because we always want to look and belong in a society where we feel comfortable. And sometimes we don't feel comfortable when we're not around people that don't look like us. That happens. That's natural. That's what humans do sometimes. And I think that's absolutely okay, right? But jealousy is one of those things today that a lot of folks don't realize that they're doing, right? Like, let's take 6 attributes of a jealous person. Resentment toward others' success or blessings, constant comparison with others, bitterness and inability to celebrate others' achievements, gossiping or tearing others down to feel better about themselves, suspicion and distrust of those that they envy, and discontent with their own life and circumstances. So I think when you look at African Americans as a whole, and you look at white people as a whole, who's happier? And why are they happier? Right? When you look at Americans as a whole, which nobody wants to do, everybody wants to divide the nation by race and by creed and by whatever. Right? When you look at the average American, what makes them happy? Some people look to Hollywood. Some people look to movie stars or artists or politicians or, national leaders and say, that's who I want to be like. If I'm like person A, person B, or person C, that's what makes me happy. Right? But we're so quick to forget, with whatever state we are in, to be content. See, one thing we should ask ourselves is what we actually deserve in this life. What do we deserve? Do we look at what a neighbor has and covet and say, I deserve what they've got? Do we look to history and say, I haven't had the opportunity to get what I deserve, so the government today owes me? I will tell you that James Williams personally has had every single opportunity to do what I've wanted in my life, and it hasn't been sunshine and rainbows, but I've been able to accomplish a lot in my career throughout the military and afterwards. I've been able to accomplish whatever I wanted. There wasn't a cult of people that are saying, we got to get this black man right here. We got to stop him. Somebody stop this man from being successful. Get him. I did not run into that. I'm not saying that there wasn't anybody that looked at me and said, I don't really like him because of his race. I can tell you that I've seen the other way. I've seen it the other way. What do you mean the other way? Well, what I mean the other way is that I've seen black people or Asians or other races other than white people saying bad things about other races. Actual racism. I've heard it. As a matter of fact, when person A, which happened to me, said something about person B and implied that person B was a racist, I said, well, let's go talk to person B. I'll go with you. We can mediate and try to figure this out. And they said, whoa, absolutely not. No, I do not want to talk to that person about this. And I'm thinking, well, why not? And he said, because don't put that on me. I just don't want to deal with it. So I went to person B and said, hey, there is a perception that you are a racist person. Right? And the reason I did that is because what we're supposed to do is conflict resolution, which is something that folks don't know how to do. We're supposed to resolve conflict. And to do that, that requires communication. It requires humility. It requires critical listening skills. It requires people to put their pride aside for a second so that they can hear each other out and try to figure out what the actual problem is. And that's something we need to do in this nation. What is the actual problem? People say the actual problem is racism. It's racism, right? Every time anything happens, the first thing the media does is they break it down by race. They don't say an American died. They don't say a man was killed. They say a black man was killed by a white man. Or they'll say this person of this creed or this sexuality was killed or hurt by this person, right? And they make it all about that. And it gets people spun up, right? There are people that just can't go to work because they're so upset about what happened to somebody they don't even know, right? Nobody was upset when I experienced negativity in the workplace. They weren't, oh, one of us is struggling. No, right? Why? Because those struggles are my own. The things I go to, the things I go through. But when I look at these news stories and the fact that they are weaponized to try to divide America as a country, it disgusts me. It absolutely disgusts me. And I think that we the people, need to stop thinking of us as the divided states of America. All right, let's talk about fascism a little bit. Individual freedoms are suppressed in favor of absolute loyalty to the state. Dissent is crushed through censorship, intimidation, or violence. They believe obedience and unity are more important than democracy or personal rights. So there is one party that is exercising this more than another in our country. Again, I talked about the fact that we keep dividing the country down the middle. I don't think that you could argue the fact that censorship has been a problem over the previous 4 years until this administration. But something I want to bring up, Jimmy Kimmel came up because, well, people are saying that the right is going after Jimmy Kimmel because of what he said about Charlie Kirk, and that it's a violation of the First Amendment. And I gotta tell you, not quite accurate. And what I mean by that is, sure, you can say whatever you want about anybody, but organizations do not have to employ you based on your personal beliefs. This is not about just disagreeing with somebody. This is not about, do you like pineapple on pizza? This has to do with the death of an American citizen. The death of an American citizen. And if people think that somebody that spoke words, and so many people disagreed with the words that he said, is worthy of death, to be an organization that has to stand beside that, you gotta look from their perspective. Now, these organizations, I don't think they really care as a whole. They care about money. They care about revenue. They care about ratings. And whatever is going to threaten and hurt that is what they care about. Just so happens Jimmy Kimmel's show has not been doing well. Not been doing well at all. As a matter of fact, many people, correct me if I'm wrong, tell me in the comments, do you watch Jimmy Kimmel? Do you sit down and make sure you don't miss an episode of his show? I don't. I don't ever watch his show. I personally think he's not that funny. I personally think that he should be entertaining us instead of using a platform that is not his to push a narrative and help further divide the country. When I sit down to be entertained, I want to be entertained. I do not need lecture, polarized views. There are times when I want to watch that. If I want to watch that, I'll tune into a specific program. But when I watched football, which I don't watch anymore, any kind of sport, I want to be entertained. I do not need lectured then. Okay, so when it comes to Jimmy Kimmel, the whole issue of free speech, my issue is this. The FCC specifically says in its rules and legal principles that broadcasters may be held accountable if content is intentionally false or misleading in a news context. Right? Now, stations must serve the public interest, convenience, and necessity as a condition of their FCC license. So you can't just use, over the public airways, you can't just use material that is not necessarily accurate. And that's exactly what he did. On September 15, 2025, during his opening monologue, Kimmel said, "We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them." Now, later, when the show returned after suspension, he clarified, this is via AP News, "It was never my intention to make light of a murder of a young man. I don't think there's anything funny about it." He also stated that he was trying not to blame any group for the killing, calling the suspect a deeply disturbed individual. To me, when he said that it was one of MAGA gang's people, it sounded like he was kind of blaming a group to me. So, I don't know. I said a lot in this video, went a lot of random places, but the point is, a racist, a fascist, a bigot, Charlie Kirk, really? I don't think so. And if you look up the definition of those things and you look at what he said, I challenge you as the viewer, if you're watching this, to go back and watch some of these videos. See what he has actually said. Maybe in later videos I'll cover some of his content and we'll see exactly what Charlie Kirk said. But I think that what we need to do is band together as a country, right? One nation under God, indivisible. We need to band together as a country rather than allowing ourselves to be divided and this violence to continue to grow and spread throughout our country. So let me know what you guys think. And remember to like, subscribe, comment down below. If you got some opinions or you want some things to come up in the next video, let me know down there. I appreciate you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.